Help me, it's moving. She just sat up on the table. We need police and backup at the city morgue immediately.
As the autopsy begins, the woman stands up. The doctor drops the scalpel, runs outside, and calls the police. But then what she discovers shocks everyone. Stay with us until the end and be part of this story. Dr. Alex Cruz, clean gown, tight gloves, took a deep breath, trying to hide the fatigue and the weight on his chest that did not come from work, but from the memory that work always brought to the steel table. A young woman, slim body, very pale skin, dark hair stuck together by moisture, no documents, no name, just a tag on her ankle. Female, approximately 25 years old, cause of death undetermined. He looked at the file and murmured, almost without voice, 20-something, so young. The air in the room seemed trapped. He adjusted the light and placed the scalpel on her chest. The cold blade reflected his image, a tense face, tired eyes, short breaths. But before the cut came the tremor. His hand faltered. A small vibration caused the scalpel to slip and fall to the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Alex closed his eyes and saw, as if he were there again, the wet seat of the car, the smell of alcohol, the desperate sound of sirens, and on his lap, the little body, wrapped in a white blanket. In that memory, the detail that destroyed him, the pink bracelet with the name of his newborn daughter hanging from her tiny wrist. Sophia Cruz, 2019, the same year he froze during an emergency, unable to act, and lost both his daughter and his self-confidence. He returned to the present with the sound of his breath colliding with the mask. He tried to swallow the lump rising in his throat. "Come on, Alex," he whispered. "It's just another body. Do your job." But it wasn't just another body. There was something different about this girl. The way her hands were half open, her fingers dirty, as if she had clung to life until the last second. He moved closer, adjusting the sheet that covered her body up to her chest. The cold touch of the metal on her skin sent a shiver down his spine. The distant sound of a leak filled the silence outside. The wind banged hard on the window, and each creak made his heart race. He picked up the scalpel again, but his gloves were damp with sweat, not water. "Sorry," he muttered, in a voice that should be cold for this, "but I can't." He left the scalpel on the tray and ran his hand over his face. He felt the damp mask. He stood there still, just looking at her. The lamp flickered twice on his badge. The incomplete registration number, Case 3, Unit 27, so impersonal, so empty. He took a step back, took a deep breath, and tried to pray quietly, something he hadn't done in years. "May God receive me and forgive me if I fail again." He stood there motionless with his head down, feeling the tears burn in his eyes. The cold table in front of him, the body that looked asleep, and the ghost of guilt that never left him. He took a deep breath, trying to push away the memory that still insisted on returning. His fingers trembled a little, but he forced his hand to sign. He adjusted the light on the young woman's body, held his breath, and lowered the scalpel. It was then that he heard the sound, a low sigh, faint but human. Alex stopped immediately, the scalpel falling from his hand with a sharp noise on the floor. He whispered, "No, I must be hearing things." He remained motionless for a few seconds, his heart beating very fast, trying to understand. The room seemed to shrink around him. Her body moved. It was impossible. Impossible. But that sound. He leaned his face a few inches from hers. The bright light from the lamp flickered slightly, creating shadows on her eyelids. And then again, a slight movement in the vein of her neck, almost invisible. A breath of air escaped from her lips like a moan. Alex stumbled backward, tripping over his own shadow. "My God," he murmured. "It can't be." His medical instinct kicked in before his mind understood what was happening. He ran towards her and placed his fingers on her neck just below her ear. For a second, nothing. Another second, and then a weak pulse. But it was there. The blood rushed to his head, and his breath caught in his throat. "She's alive!" he shouted hoarsely. He pressed the red emergency button and the alarm sounded loudly, breaking the silence of the morgue. The sound could be heard throughout the corridors, waking everyone in the early hours of the morning. "Lucy! Lucy! Come quickly!" he shouted, his heart pounding. The door burst open, and Lucy, the nurse, rushed in, still adjusting her gown. "What happened, doctor? What happened?" He pointed, unable to take his eyes off the young woman. "She's breathing. She has a pulse. She's alive, Lucy." Lucy stood paralyzed, staring at the body on the table. "How can she be alive? She arrived with a confirmed death certificate." "I know what I heard," he replied, agitated, "and I felt it. Look." He took her hand and placed it on the young woman's neck. "Feel," he said. Lucy hesitated, but brought her fingers closer. Her expression changed in a second. "My God," she whispered. "Yes, she has a pulse. It's weak, but she's alive." They looked at each other, not knowing what to say for a moment. No one moved, except for the sound of the alarm and Alex's heart beating very loudly. He took a deep breath and spoke quickly. "Bring the stretcher. Bring oxygen. Let's go to the emergency room now." Lucy ran out. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the empty hallway. Alex stayed there, holding the young woman's pulse, looking at the body that until a few minutes ago had been pure silence. "Hold on, please," he said in a low voice, almost like a plea. "Stay with me." Her body was cold, her lips pale, but the small movement in her chest continued, almost timid, almost a challenge to death. He adjusted the sheet over her, trying to protect her from the cold of the room. For a second, everything seemed to stop. The sound of the alarm subsided. Time slowed down. Alex felt his heart racing, and inside him a strange mixture of fear, surprise, and a spark of hope that he hadn't felt in years. He looked at her face. "You're back," he whispered, his eyes filled with tears. "I swear I won't let them take you away again." Lucy returned with the stretcher, and together they carefully moved the body. The wheels of the cart made noise on the tile floor. Alex pressed the elevator button, still trembling, his mind trying to grasp what his heart already knew. That woman declared dead was alive. When the doors closed, he continued to look at her, the shine of the metal reflecting in his eyes. Silent tears fell under his mask. The cart crossed the hallway as if it were running silently. It was dawn, the hospital half dark, only those cold lights on the ceiling lit. Alex pushed the stretcher ahead, and Lucy came alongside, holding the IV and talking quickly. "Her blood pressure is low, but she's coming." "Come on, come on!" They entered the emergency room. The sound of the monitor turning on broke the silence. The screen lit up, and the green line appeared, first straight, then a dash, then another. Slow heartbeats, but there they were. "Thank God. God," Lucy sighed. Alex stared at that line as if he were witnessing a miracle. The beeping sound was soft and intermittent, but it was the sound of life. He took a deep breath and began to give orders automatically. "Connect the oxygen. Warm her up. I want the temperature. And record everything," he said firmly. Lucy pulled the thermal blanket and covered the young woman. Her skin was cold, almost like ice. She wasn't responding. Her eyes were closed. Her mouth was pale, and her hair was stuck to her neck. She looked like someone who had been in the cold for a long time. As he adjusted her head to put the oxygen mask on properly, Alex saw a glint right there on her neck. He carefully moved the sheet and the collar of the hospital gown. There was a thin, ordinary necklace, but with a pendant that caught his attention. A blue heart. It wasn't a store-bought blue. It was a thick blue, as if it had been painted on. Alex frowned. This wasn't in his file. He moved closer. The chain left a slight mark on his neck, as if someone had put it on carelessly. It wasn't an expensive piece of jewelry, but it didn't match the condition he arrived in. Someone who leaves someone unconscious on the street doesn't usually leave them a necklace. Lucy saw it too. She arrived with that question. He spoke softly, thinking, no one took it off. The rule was clear. Everything that comes with the body must be recorded, even more so if there are no documents, and even more so when the cause of death is undetermined. Alex grabbed the hospital's institutional cell phone from the table. It wasn't to take a pretty picture, it was for evidence. He moved closer and took a picture of the entire necklace, then another of the clasp, the color of the heart detail. "I'm going to upload it to the system," he said. "It could be important." He didn't remove the necklace. He couldn't. There was protocol. There was chain of custody. Anything different. And the police would ask questions and more. He felt that the necklace was hers. It wasn't something you just take away like that. The young woman was still lying there, unaware. Her chest rose slowly, the monitor complaining with slow beeps. So vulnerable, so alone. Alex moved closer. The light from the room fell on her face and revealed small marks from the cold, bruises that were almost disappearing, but he didn't let himself get carried away by that. It wasn't time to think about that yet. The important thing now was to keep her alive. He lowered his voice. "Hey," he whispered, as if she could hear him. "You almost ended up on the wrong table, but you're not going to end up there. You hear me? You're not going." He leaned closer, his face near hers but without touching her. He looked again at the blue heart. That color screamed. It seemed like someone's mark. It seemed like someone somewhere wanted to say, "She's mine." And then he spoke softly, in a tone that was not that of a doctor, but of a father, of a man who had already lost someone and did not want to lose again. "Look, this heart." He touched only the edge of the pendant with his glove, without removing it. "This heart will be your shield from now on." He wasn't giving her the necklace. It wasn't his. It wasn't a gift. It was just a promise. Lucy looked at him for a second. She knew Alex. She knew what had happened. She recognized that look of someone who fights with the past. The doctor said more professionally, "Now I'm going to have to remove it and catalog it." "Yes, there can't be any metal to do the tests." He nodded. "I know. Do it right. Record everything. Put a seal number on it and note and that it was around her neck. I don't want it to disappear. It's hers." Lucy took out the transparent evidence bag, knelt down next to the stretcher, and lifted the young woman's neck very carefully, almost as if she were touching a porcelain doll. "I'm sorry, sweetie," she said softly, out of habit from working with people, not objects. "Just a moment." She carefully opened the clasp without breaking it, put the necklace in the bag, wrote down the time, wrote "Blue Heart Pendant," entered it with the patient, closed the seal, ready, number 88841. "No one touches it without authorization." Alex breathed a sigh of relief. "Keep it safe. This says something." He looked again at the young woman on the stretcher without the necklace. Her neck seemed even more fragile. He leaned close to her ear and repeated softly, as if wanting to engrave it on her soul. "Even though it's no longer around your neck, that heart is still your shield." Yes, it's over. The monitor beeped again, slow but steady heartbeats. The room that had previously been nothing but metal and cold now seemed to have some meaning. Alex wrote in the file, "Female patient, approximately 25 years old, found in apparent state of death, recovered cardiorespiratory response, had necklace with blue pendant, photographed and sent as evidence." He closed the file. He looked at her again. "You're not going to be a number. You're going to have a name next to it." The transparent bag glistened with the blue heart inside, sealed. It was as if her entire history was trapped there in that small piece of painted metal. The monitor continued with that constant sound, a slow, almost timid beep. The emergency room was filled with a tense calm, the kind of calm that comes after something impossible. Lucy stood next to him, writing down her vital signs and checking the veins in her arm. "Saturation rising, temperature 34, she said quietly. "Still hypothermic, but she's reacting." Alex nodded, but his mind was already elsewhere. Something kept catching his attention, a slight discomfort, like a sign. There were details about this girl's body that didn't fit with a simple story. He pulled the flexible arm lamp and tilted the light over his hands. What he saw made his heart beat faster. Heart. "Lucy, look at this," he murmured. She approached. "What?" Alex took the patient's left hand and lifted it slowly. Under her fingernails were small marks of blue paint. It wasn't normal dirt. It was dried paint accumulated between the skin and the nail, as if she had scratched a freshly painted surface. "It doesn't look like pen ink," commented Lucy, frowning. "It's thick like wall or floor paint," he added, thinking aloud. The other hand was the same. The fingertips showed small scratches, as if she had tried to free herself from something. Alex remained silent, staring. He touched it with a collection swab, scraped off a little of the paint, and put it in a tube. "It looks like blue pigment residue," he said, speaking more to himself than to Lucy. She watched him work and asked quietly, "Do you think—" He looked up and shook his head. "I don't think anything yet. But a natural death doesn't leave paint under the fingernails. The phrase hung in the air. Neither of them said anything else. Only the sound of the monitor filled the space. Alex took a deep breath and continued the examination. When he lifted the sleeve of the hospital gown, he noticed something on her right wrist. A deep purple mark seemed to have been caused by something that had been tied there for a long time. "Lucy, bring me the magnifying glass." She handed him the instrument and leaned in. "It looks like tape," she said, almost without a voice. "Thick adhesive tape." "Yes." He ran his finger gently over the mark. "This is not a bracelet or elastic. Someone tied it there." They stood in silence for a moment, looking at it. It was as if the weight of it was greater than the air in the room. Lucy took a step back. "She arrived as an undetermined death. But doctor, I know this," Alex interrupted, still looking at her skin. "It doesn't fit with anything natural." Silence returned. He continued the examination, moving down the arm, and it was then that he saw something that froze him inside. On the inside of the forearm, almost erased but still visible under the white light, there was a number written in pen, 421. The strokes were blurred, as if someone had tried to wash it off, but the outline was still there, marked on the skin. Alex paused and spent a few seconds just looking at that number, not understanding what he was feeling. A simple number, but in that context it felt heavy and strange. "Lucy, look at this." His voice came out hoarse. She came closer and saw that it was written with a pen, perhaps a permanent marker. Who would write a number on the arm of someone who had just swallowed the phrase? This wasn't something from the hospital. Lucy crossed her arms, gasping for air. 421. What could it be? 1, 4. A code? "I don't know yet," she sighed. "But it's not a coincidence." She moved closer and looked at the details. The pen stroke was firm, done calmly. It wasn't a scribble. It was a mark. Alex grabbed the protocol camera and took photos. One of the hand, another of the wrist, another of the number on the arm. Each click was like a punch in the stomach. Then he moved away a little, breathing deeply. The sound of the beep beep filled the space, reminding him that this woman, despite everything, was still breathing. Lucy looked at him, wanting to break the silence. "What do you think happened to her, doctor?" He ran his hand over his face, his gaze still lost in the marks. "I think someone wanted her to look dead, but she fought back." The words came out softly, almost like a whisper. Lucy bit her lip, excited. She tried to escape. Alex nodded slowly and succeeded, he said, seeing the stained fingernails, the number on her arm, the mark on her wrist. Somehow, she made it. They remained silent for a while. Lucy discreetly wiped her eyes, and Alex just looked at the woman on the stretcher, imagining what she had been through. The cold light of the room reflected off the walls, and the number 421 seemed to beat on her arm, as if it were a sign, a cry for help that time had not yet erased. Alex reached out his hand, but did not touch her. He spoke very softly, just for her. "Whatever they did to you is over now." "Yes, it's over." The monitor beeped again, slow but steady heartbeats. Life persisted, and as he recorded everything in the report, he felt the weight of something greater emerging. The certainty that this body did not tell a story of natural death. It told a story of struggle, a story that somehow still breathed. Lucy adjusted her gloves, pulled her hair back, and took a deep breath. Alex, sitting next to the stretcher, finished filling out the reports. The woman was still unconscious, her face now redder, her body still trembling a little, but alive. Lucy approached with the steel tray, a clean towel, and the bottle of solution. It was protocol to clean the scalp and remove debris before the tests. Something simple, something routine. She carefully placed her hand under the young woman's head, lifting it slightly. The hair was hard in some places, stuck with dirt and paint residue. "Poor thing," she murmured softly as she wet the towel. "What did they do to you, girl?" The trickle of water ran down the patient's forehead and slowly traced a path across her skin. Lucy wiped the damp cloth carefully, as if afraid of hurting her with each stroke. The girl's face looked cleaner, more human. "Doctor," she said without looking up, "it looks like her hair is tied up. I can't get it loose." Alex looked up from the paper. "Use the small scissors. Cut only the tied part, but keep what you remove." "Yes." Lucy felt it, and pulled the hair carefully, trying to undo the knot that held it in place. That's when she realized it wasn't a hair tie, it wasn't a ribbon, it was something else rigid with the sheen of worn plastic. She separated the hair a little more, and her heart skipped a beat. Wrapped around it like a hair tie was an old hospital bracelet, dirty and yellowed by time. Lucy held it between her fingers, almost unable to believe it. The numbers and letters were faded, but she could still read part of it. She cleaned it with a damp cloth, and her eyes filled with tears. Written there in faded pen, it read, Valeria S. 2014. She froze for a moment, the name repeating itself in her head. Doctor? She called in a different tone, a mixture of surprise and excitement. Come and see this, Alex. He got up and went to the stretcher. What happened, Lucy? She held up the bracelet, showing it to him. This was in her hair, wrapped around it like a rubber band to tie it up. He frowned, approached, and took the piece between his fingers carefully. Yes, it's a hospital bracelet, he murmured, duh. But look at the year, 2014. The two of them stared silently at the plastic band. Although old, it still retained the round shape of having been worn on a wrist. It was one of those thin maternity bracelets with space for a name and registration date. Lucy spoke almost in a whisper. Valeria. That must be her name. No. Alex nodded slowly. It must be. Then he looked down at the face of the woman. Valeria. The name came out softly, as if she were afraid of breaking the silence in the room. Lucy put her hand on her shoulder. She kept this with her for years, Doctor. Look how it's tangled in her hair, as if it were an amulet. Alex ran his thumb over the almost faded writing. 2014, he repeated thoughtfully. Maybe it was the year of some medical attention, or he didn't finish the sentence. The possibilities of what it could mean that year were many, and he didn't want to assume anything without knowing, but the gesture of using it as a hair tie said a lot. Lucy put the bracelet in a clear bag, like the ones used for evidence, and wrote down what it was and the time she picked it up. I'm going to put it in the record too, she said. Even if it's old, it may help identify her. Alex nodded, but didn't stop looking at the woman on the stretcher. The name, now spoken aloud, seemed to change everything. Valeria was no longer the young woman without documents. She had a name, a little piece of history, a stored memory. That bracelet was perhaps all she had from a past that no one knew about. Lucy finished washing her hair, combing it slowly with her fingers, and with each loose strand, Valeria's face seemed calmer, more human. It was there, hidden all along, said Lucy, moved. In the midst of the pain, she was still clinging to a little piece of what Alex had been. She took a deep breath and wiped her eyes, hiding her emotions. No one keeps a memory like that for 10 years without a reason. The cold light in the room shone on the bracelet inside the bag, and the old plastic reflected a soft, almost warm glow. Lucy placed the bag next to the sealed necklace, and for a moment, the two objects, the blue heart and the white bracelet, seemed to speak to each other, as if silently telling the story of a life that still struggled to be remembered. Alex looked at Valeria again and said, almost in a whisper, You are not alone. We are going to find out who you are. The monitor continued to beep slowly and steadily, and in that constant sound, on that cold early morning in Houston, two people silently understood something that needed no words. Sometimes what we call a miracle does not come with light or angels. Sometimes it comes in a piece of old plastic, with a name and a year that should never have been forgotten. The clock read almost 2 in the afternoon when the sound of quick footsteps broke the silence in the hallway. The hospital, once cold and quiet, now had the comings and goings of busy hours. At the end of the hallway, a small woman dressed in an old shawl and with eyes full of tears walked slowly, as if she were carrying the whole world on her shoulders. She was Doña Carmen Santos, 58 years old, her face marked by the sun and by waiting. Her hands trembled as she clutched a crumpled envelope containing what remained of half a photo, the young face of a smiling girl cut right down the middle. The nurse at the entrance approached cautiously. You, Carmen, she said hoarsely. The NGO called me. They said it could be my daughter who is hospitalized here. The woman took a deep breath, as if she needed to ask permission to exist. On the nurse's badge, she recognized the name Lucy. She recognized the name. It had been her who had called earlier, her heart heavy after seeing the internal memo. Young, in her 20s, heart-shaped necklace. Lucy took a step forward. "Doña Carmen, please come with me. Captain Herrera has already authorized the visit." Carmen clutched her shawl tightly. "I waited so long for this call, miss," she said, her eyes shining. "I dreamed she was still alive. You know she was going to show up somewhere." "Place." Lucy looked down. "We don't know anything yet, ma'am, but you can see her calmly." They walked down the white hallway, the lights flickering, the smell of alcohol in the air. Carmen walked slowly, almost dragging her feet with each step. The sound of her heels could be heard, and she remembered something else. Her daughter's laughter, the sound of the radio in the kitchen, the mornings when Valeria would rush off to work. "She disappeared in March," she murmured almost to herself. "She went out to deliver some papers and never came back." Lucy just listened. She had learned that silence is sometimes the greatest gesture of respect. At the door to the emergency room, Captain Herrera of the local police was waiting. A tall man, in a simple uniform, with a serious look on his face. "Are you the young woman's mother?" he asked, removing his hat out of respect. "Yes, sir," Carmen replied, clutching the envelope to her chest. "If it's my girl, I need to know." Herrera nodded. "The NGO voices searching. They notified us as soon as they saw the hospital report. The description matched. The blue necklace, the age." He paused briefly. "But you're going to confirm it, right?" Carmen took a deep breath, and a tear escaped her. "I waited so long to hear that the description matched." She smiled sadly, "But I wanted it to be for another reason. You understand me?" No one answered. Lucy opened the door carefully, as if opening something sacred. Inside, the room was calm. Valeria was lying, connected to monitors, her body covered up to her chest. The beeping sound was slow and steady, almost like a reminder that there was still life there. Carmen stopped at the entrance, her legs trembling. "My God," she whispered, leaning against the wall. Lucy took her arm firmly but gently. "You can come closer if you want." Carmen took 2 hesitant steps, each step a memory. When she reached the stretcher, time seemed to stand still. She looked at the young woman's face, her dark hair, her fair skin, the shape of her mouth. "Is it her?" Her voice broke. "It's my Valeria." The tears came slowly, without sound. They weren't cries. They were sighs of relief and pain at the same time. Alex, who was watching from a distance, lowered his head. He had seen people die before, but he had never seen someone return to an embrace that had not yet happened. Carmen's hands were shaking, but she still took the half of a photo from the envelope and placed it next to her daughter's face. The photo showed a younger Valeria smiling. "I kept this half because she had the other half in her bag," she explained, crying softly. "I told her to take it with her, so she would remember that her mother would always find her." Lucy clutched the handkerchief in her pocket, trying to hold back her tears. "She's alive, ma'am," she said softly, very weakly, but alive. Carmen covered her mouth with both hands and cried as if giving thanks. "Alive," she repeated. "My girl is alive." Captain Herrera stood respectfully at the door, watching the scene in silence. He knew that this moment did not belong to the police or the hospital, but to mother and daughter. Carmen slowly ran her hand over her daughter's face. "You're so thin, my daughter. What did they do to you, my love?" she whispered. "I looked everywhere for you and asked God so many times to let me see you again, even if only for a second." Alex approached with a calm voice. "She's responding well, Doña Carmen. We're going to take care of her." Carmen looked up at him. "You were the one who thought she was alive, right?" He hesitated, then nodded. "It was luck. Or maybe..." He took a deep breath. "Maybe not." Carmen looked at her daughter and then at him. "It wasn't luck, Doctor. God uses the hands of those who have a heart." The silence that followed was heavy and beautiful at the same time. Luke discreetly wiped away a tear and approached to adjust the sheet. The sound of the monitors seemed louder now, as if each beep were saying, "She's back." Carmen was still there, holding her daughter's hand and speaking softly, as if talking to a sleeping child. "Mommy's here, my love. Can you hear me? I'm here. Don't be afraid anymore." Yes, the light was coming in through the window and shining on both their faces, and in that moment, The whole hospital seemed to witness this silent reunion between a mother who never gave up and a daughter who fought to come back. Captain Herrera wiped the corners of his eyes and took a deep breath. "Ma'am," he said in a firm but respectful voice, "now that we know her name, we will take care of the rest. You can rest assured." Carmen looked at him with her face wet with tears and a slight smile. "I am at peace, Captain, because the rest, God will take care of." And she remained seated next to the stretcher, caressing her daughter's hand, as if all the time without her could be erased with that single touch. Alex watched silently in that cold room. Something warm had happened, something that no scalpel, examination, or report could explain. The reunion of a mother with the part of her that the world wanted to take away from her, but couldn't. And for the first time in a long time, everyone there, Lucy, Alex, Herrera, and even the hospital, felt they were witnessing a miracle. A simple human miracle made of tears, faith, and love that never gave up. Alex couldn't sleep after seeing her hands with blue paint under her fingernails. It kept going round and round in his head, like a siren. It wasn't something from the hospital. It wasn't something from the street. It was paint from a place where someone paints a lot every day. And if she had blue paint on her fingernails and a number written on it, someone had put it there. Someone who didn't want her to be seen as a person. At the end of the afternoon, when Carmen was calmer beside her daughter and Lucy was organizing the records, Alex left the room, took off his cap, and went straight to find Captain Javier Herrera, who was at the reception desk talking to 2 police officers. "Captain," he said firmly, "I need to talk to you for a minute." Herrera looked at him with respect. He had already seen that doctor in the early morning with red eyes saying, "She's alive," as if he had a miracle in his hands. "Of course, doctor." Cruz moved away from the others. "What happened?" Alex took a deep breath. "The paint," he said bluntly. "Under her fingernails is the same color as the necklace. It's not toy paint, it's compressor paint. This isn't a detail, it's a clue." Herrera looked at him for a second, evaluating him. "We already have the location where they found her," he replied. "It was near an industrial area on the north side. They said she was lying near a wall. We brought her in as a homeless person because, well, she looked dead." "Then take me there," Alex spoke bluntly. "I need to see." Dr. Herrera tried to argue. "That's a police zone. It's dangerous. There are a lot of bad people there." "I know," Alex interrupted him, but without arrogance. "But I was the first to touch her alive, and I saw the number on her arm, 421, and I saw how the tape marked her wrist. She didn't fall there by chance. She escaped, and if she escaped, that means the place could still be active." Silence. Herrera pressed his lips together, looked away, and thought quickly. He knew that area well. Old warehouses, workshops, storage facilities. And if there's one thing an experienced police officer knows, it's that when the doctor insists on a detail, it's because he saw something no one else saw. "All right," he said finally, "but let's go officially. You're going as a technical witness, not as a hero. Don't touch anything. Don't go anywhere I don't tell you to go." "Deal," Alex replied, relieved. Minutes later, they were in the patrol car crossing the city. The sky was beginning to turn orange, and the wind was hitting the glass. Alex was in the passenger seat, fidgeting with his seatbelt. Herrera was talking to the police officer on the radio. "Unit 3, confirm the coordinates where the female body was found at dawn. That's kilometer 14, north exit, industrial zone, near the big red and yellow warehouse." "Exactly. We're on our way." He hung up and looked at Alex. She was lying about 10 meters from the street. If it had rained, we wouldn't have seen her. Lucky that someone passed by early. Or maybe it wasn't luck, Alex muttered. Maybe she tried to get to the street and passed out before she got there. They arrived at the industrial zone, a somewhat abandoned area with rusty signs, stained walls, and the smell of paint in the air. Some warehouses had their doors half open. Others were closed with chains. The sun was beating down sideways, making the ground look rougher. It was there, the policeman who was accompanying them pointed out, next to that white wall. Alex quickly got down on the ground. Without the body, you could still see the mark where it had been. There was still a damp spot next to it, almost invisible, drops of blue paint on the cement. Here, Alex crouched down. I told you, Herrera said, approaching and crouching down as well. This didn't fall from the sky, he commented, and it's not house paint, household paint. It's automotive or industrial compressor paint. He looked up. In front of them, about 15 meters away, was a paint warehouse with an old roof and a metal door that was only half raised. On one side, there was a hole in the wall, improvised as a passageway from the inside to the outside. Let's check everything, Herrera said to the other 2 police officers. Weapons at the ready, and no one steps on anything blue without taking a photo. They went inside. The smell of paint was strong, almost sweet. Inside, there was a large compressor in one corner, hoses scattered on the floor, cans of blue, dark blue, and sky blue paint, several barrels, cans, boxes painted blue, and in some places on the floor, traces of paint that looked like they had been dragged by something with small wheels. Alex pointed with his heart racing. Look at that. Parallel marks go all the way over there. He followed the line with his eyes. That's not a wheelbarrow. That's a chair with wheels. A chair? Asked one of the police officers. One of those wheelchairs used to restrain someone who is seated. Alex responded with a firmness that made everyone serious. Herrera called the police photographer on the radio. Meanwhile, he began taking photos with his official cell phone. Photos of the compressor, the cans, the paint trail on the floor. She must have been here, said Herrera, and he ran to the wall. When she had the chance, they threw her out, added Alex. But first she tried to grab hold, which is why the paint came off her fingernails. They advanced a few more meters into the back room. It didn't look like a paint room. It was darker. A wooden door, a broken padlock. Herrera signaled to stop, pointed his gun, and pushed the door open. The air was heavier, with almost no breeze. The floor had marks from little movement, and the walls spoke. What Alex saw turned his stomach. On the walls, painted with a thick brush, were several poorly drawn blue hearts, some with dripping paint, and right in the center of the largest wall, written in large, bold blue letters, was 421. It wasn't a random number. It was a repeated number. There was 421 on the left wall, 421 near the small window, 421 in the corner of the floor, as if it were a mark for those who entered here. It's 421, the number, Alex whispered, almost without a voice. The same one, written on her arm. Herrera opened his eyes. So it's here, he said seriously. She came from here. In a corner of the room was an old, dirty mattress with a torn sheet next to it, 2 chains tied to a hook in the floor, and a bucket. It was 1-4. It wasn't a house. It wasn't a workshop. It was a prison. Everything photographed, Herrera ordered. This is now a crime scene. One of the policemen called out, "Captain, there's something here." On a plastic box near the back wall was a folded piece of paper, half stained with paint. It wasn't an official document. It was a piece of a photo. He picked it up with tweezers and opened it carefully. It was half of a photo of a young woman smiling. Alex took a step forward. "It can't be," whispered Herrera. He looked at the doctor. "It's her," Alex swallowed. "It's the same half of the photo that the mother brought today. The mother has the left side. This is the right side." They looked at each other. It was the evidence that closed the circle. Valeria was there. Someone kept her mother's photo with her. Someone put that face there for her to see, or she kept it herself. But somehow that photo got out of there and ended up in Carmen's hands. Now the two existed on the same day, in the same city. Captain Herrera spoke with a heavy voice. She wasn't caught on the street. She came back to this place, either escaping or fainting at the exit. That's why she was so close to the wall. Herrera felt the seriousness of someone who already understood what he had in his hands. And that blue continued. Alex looked at the painted hearts. It wasn't a pretty color. It was a mark of ownership. They marked her. They marked the room. They marked the number. And that number completed. Herrera. It's Control 421. It's not a date. It's a cell. A heavy silence filled the warehouse. The light coming in through a crack illuminated the mattress and the blue hearts, as if to say, at what happened there on the floor near the door, there was another trail of little wheels going towards the outside wall. a drag mark as if someone had been taken to the exit in a chair, and from there to the street. It was here, Herrera affirmed. Compressor, blue paint, number on the wall, mattress, chains. It's the same pattern as the paint on her nails. This connects the place. Alex took a deep breath. The scene was harsh. He imagined Valeria sitting there, her hands tied with tape, listening to the noise of the compressor, painting something, perhaps the same necklace. He imagined her looking at the number 421 on the wall for hours. He imagined her running, trying to get to the street, her weak body falling outside. She fought so hard he muttered more to himself, and almost ended up as a nameless corpse. Herrera put his hand on his shoulder. "You didn't finish," he said firmly, "because you heard her sigh, and because her mother didn't give up. Now it's our turn." Outside, the sun was already setting. The street continued with its normal noise, people passing by without knowing that inside there was a place of pain. But that afternoon, the walls that were silent spoke. They spoke in blue. They spoke with numbers. They spoke with photos. And three things became clear. The blue was Mark 421. It was a code. And Valeria did not fall there by accident. Alex left the warehouse with a heavy heart, but with something different from the man who, in the early morning, had almost cut a living body. Now he was certain that if she survived, someone would have to answer for 421 and what they had painted on her, to mark her. He had already promised he would be a shield. The afternoon was slowly coming to an end, and the sun coming through the hospital window drew a golden strip on the floor of the room. The air still smelled of disinfectant, but there was something different in that space. A quiet silence filled with breathing and hope. Carmen was sitting next to her daughter's bed, with a faded shawl over her shoulders. The light fell on her face and showed the features of someone who had waited too long. Each wrinkle seemed to tell a piece of the story that the body still did not dare to tell. Valeria lay motionless with her eyes closed, her body covered up to her chest. The monitor made that regular, almost hypnotic sound. Beep beep, the sound of life trying to stay. Carmen looked at Lucy, who was adjusting the IV. "She feels it, right, daughter? Even though she's asleep, she hears it." Lucy replied in a soft voice. "Yes, she hears it, Doña Carmen. Brain stores the voices it loves. You can talk to her." Carmen took a deep breath, adjusted her chair, and held her daughter's hand with both hands, as she used to do when she was a child, and woke up in the middle of the night, afraid of the dark. The palm was cold, the fingers thin, but it was the same hand. The same. "My girl," she began, her voice trembling. "Do you remember the song I used to sing to you when it rained?" No one answered, but Carmen wasn't expecting an answer. "That about the rain and the little bird," she said, wiping her eyes with her shawl. "You used to say, 'Mommy, sing it again, but more softly, so I can fall asleep quickly.'" She closed her eyes and began to sing. It was a simple melody of 3 repeated notes, sweet and slow. "Go to sleep, my darling, go to sleep, because outside, the moon will take care of you." Her voice trembled at first, then grew steadier, moved by the memory. The sound filled the entire room. Even the monitor seemed softer, the air warmer. Lucy, standing in the corner, turned discreetly, pretending to arrange a tray to hide her tears. Alex was at the door, silent. He had come to see the exam results, but he stood there, not daring to interrupt the scene. It pierced him like a slow knife. Mother and daughter, separated for years, now united by a song that had crossed time and fear. Carmen continued to sing softly, repeating each verse lovingly, as if the words could open a path to Valeria's sleeping heart. "Outside, the moon," her voice broke at the end, and she rested her forehead on her daughter's hand. "Silence will take care of you." Only the sound of oxygen and the rhythm of the monitor returned. Carmen stood there, moving her head slowly, as if she were still rocking me in her arms. It was then that Doña Pilar from the hospital kitchen appeared at the door, wearing her coffee-stained apron and a shy look on her face. "Excuse me," she said, holding something folded in her lap. "I didn't want to interrupt, but I made some tea and brought this." Carmen looked and saw that she was holding a new blue shawl, hand-knitted. "I saw you earlier, and, well, Pilar hesitated, uncomfortable. The air here is cold, and this girl must be cold when she wakes up. She placed the shawl at the foot of the bed, and next to it was a little piece of paper, written on a kitchen napkin, with a pen, "So you don't get cold." Carmen took the paper and smiled through her tears. "How beautiful," she said, touching the fabric. "Did you make it?" Pilar shrugged, somewhat embarrassed. "I knit to distract myself, and sometimes when I see people struggling to live, I like to leave something. I don't know if it helps, but it's what I can do." Alex approached and put his hand on her shoulder. "It helps, ma'am. A lot." Lucy carefully took the shawl carefully and covered Valeria's chest. The soft blue contrasted with the white sheet, and for a moment it seemed as if the color brought life back. Carmen caressed the fabric, moved. "She always liked blue," she said, almost in a whisper. "Since she was little, when we went to the market, she would ask, 'Mom, if there's blue, get blue.'" The room fell silent again, only the sound of breathing and the wind hitting the window. Carmen was still there, caressing the shawl, her daughter's face, her hair. "So many months without knowing where you were, my love," she murmured. "I asked God so much that if he couldn't find you alive, at least let me see you asleep to know that you were resting. But he was kinder to me and brought you back." Lucy approached and put her hand on Carmen's shoulder. "She'll hear your voice, ma'am. Keep singing." And Carmen sang again, but this time her voice didn't trembling. It was serene, full of faith. "Go to sleep, my love. Go to sleep, for outside, the moon will watch over you." At the end of the song, she kissed her daughter's forehead and remained there, looking as if she wanted to save that moment, so she would never forget it. Doña Pilar turned off the bright light and left only the side lamp on. The room was bathed in a warm, cozy glow, with the blue of the shawl standing out against the white. Alex was still watching from afar. He said nothing, just thought about how sometimes the love of simple people, a mother's, a kitchen lady's, a nurse's, works more miracles than any medicine. The monitor continued to beep quietly. Carmen kept her eyes closed, her fingers intertwined with her daughter's, murmuring words that only the two of them understood. And in that moment, the whole hospital seemed to breathe with her, because it wasn't just a mother singing to her daughter. It was life being called back with the purest sound that exists, the voice of someone who loves. The room was almost silent. Only the rhythmic sound of the monitor and the soft breath of oxygen filled the air. It was late afternoon, and the light coming through the window was no longer strong. It was that golden color that makes everything seem calmer. Carmen slept sitting in the armchair next to her, her hand still holding her daughter's. Daughter. The blue shawl covered them both. Lucy changed the IV carefully, speaking softly to Alex, who was checking the notes. "Normal saturation. Pressure still a little unstable," she said. Alex nodded. "The body is reacting well. Now it's just a matter of time." It was at that moment that Valeria's body moved, almost imperceptibly at first. A slight tremor in her fingers, a small contraction in her face. Carmen opened her eyes, not understanding. "Doctor," she murmured, challenging her daughter's hand. "Look, she moved." Lucy quickly looked at the monitor. "There's a motor response. She's trying to wake up." Alex approached slowly, with the calmness of someone who knows how powerful a fright can be. Valeria said softly, "Calm down. You're safe." "Yes." Her breathing began to change, first stronger, then faster. Her eyes moved under her eyelids like someone trapped in a nightmare. "Valeria, listen to me," he tried again. "You're in the hospital. No one is going to hurt you." But suddenly her eyes opened, a lost, frightened look, like someone waking up in an unfamiliar place. She sat up with a jolt, her body trembling, her chest rising and falling too fast, her hands searching the air, trying to protect herself from something invisible. "No, don't take me to him," she cried, her voice breaking. Carmen jumped up, her heart pounding. "Calm down, my love. It's me, Mom." She tried to touch her face, but Valeria instinctively recoiled, her eyes full of fear. "No, not again. I don't want to," she said, shaking her head and gasping for breath. Alex stepped forward with his palms open, as if approaching a wounded animal. "Valeria, look at me," he said firmly but gently. You're not with him. You're in the hospital with your mom." She looked around, confused, breathing between sobs. The smell of the hospital, the alcohol, the latex of the gloves, the sound of the machines seemed like invisible triggers bringing back memories of a dark place from which she had escaped. "The smell," she whispered, clutching her head with her hands. "Smells the same, just like there." Carmen held back her tears, trying to get closer. "Honey, listen to me, please. There's no one bad here. It's me, Mom." Valeria looked at her mother, her eyes full of tears, not recognizing her at first, and then for a second, she seemed to really see her. "Mom?" she asked, almost without a voice. Carmen nodded, crying, "Yes, my love. It's me. I'm here with you." But Valeria's body couldn't take the strain, the fear, the shock, all at once. Her eyelids grew heavy, her neck fell, and she fainted in her mother's arms. Carmen held her tightly, desperately. "My God, Valeria, daughter, don't go, please." Lucy ran to the monitor. Her blood pressure dropped a little, but it's stabilizing. She fainted from the shock, not from cardiac arrest. Alex put his hand on Carmen's shoulder. "Calm down, ma'am. She just fainted. Her body reacted to the panic. She's safe." Carmen cried softly, resting her forehead on her daughter's. "Oh, Lord, what did they do to my girl? What did they do to her?" Lucy looked at Alex with eyes full of tears. "It was pure fear, doctor. It wasn't even pain. It was memory." Alex took a deep breath. The smell of alcohol, the sound of machines. For us, it's routine. For her, it's hell coming back. Carmen didn't let go of her daughter's hand. She ran her fingers through her hair, caressing her, trying to calm her down. "It's over, my love. It's over. No one here is going to take you with them. No one." With each word, the mother's voice became firmer, sweeter, as if she wanted to cover her daughter's fear with tenderness. Lucy dimmed the lights in the room, leaving only the lamp on. The atmosphere became softer, more human. Carmen continued to caress Valeria's face, singing softly the same song she had sung the night before. "Go to sleep, my love. Go to sleep now." Alex stood still, watching the monitor. He calmed down along with Carmen's voice. The beeping returned to its normal rhythm, and there, amid that mixture of pain and relief, a mother understood what true terror was, seeing the fear in her daughter's eyes and not being able to take it away with her hands, but also understanding what love was. That love that doesn't ask, doesn't demand, just stays, sings even if the other doesn't listen, holds on tight even when the body wants to give up. The room returned to silence. The fear still lingered, but she also understood what love was. That love that doesn't ask questions or make demands, that just stays there, singing even if the other person can't hear, holding on tight even when the body wants to give up. The room fell silent again. Fear still hung in the air, but now it was accompanied by a small, fragile sound. Valeria's breathing settling back into its normal rhythm, protected by the touch of a mother who would never let her be taken away. Carmen was sitting on the edge of the bed, smoothing out the blue shawl that Doña Pilar had left behind. Valeria was sleeping again, more peaceful, breathing evenly. The shock had passed, but the fear still lingered in the room like a smell that won't go away. Alex entered slowly, the little board in his hand. He looked at the nightstand next to the stretcher. Inside the evidence bag was the blue heart necklace. It seemed like a small detail, but it wasn't. She couldn't stop looking at it. Carmen noticed. "That necklace," she said softly, her voice hoarse from crying so much. "She was wearing it, right?" Alex nodded. "Yes," he replied. "Since she arrived at the coroner's office, I took photos of her and asked them to keep it. I didn't want it to get lost." Carmen took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. She reached out her hand carefully, without touching the plastic, just getting close, as if caressing it, without being able to touch it. "That heart," she said, almost like a sigh. "It was hers. I gave it to her. It wasn't blue. It was silver, small and shiny. She was 12 years old." She smiled a little, remembering, and yet the tears fell. "It was the day she moved up to 6th grade, she continued. "We didn't have money for a party, so I bought that little necklace at the flea market. It was simple but pretty. I told her it was so she would remember that she was a young lady now, and that she had to take care of her heart, my daughter. She put it on. Carmen inhaled. She was so happy. She looked at herself in the mirror, turning around. Look, Mom, I have a heart. Alex sat down on the chair. He knew he had to listen. It was part of her story, and she never took it off. Carmen added, not even to sleep or to bathe. Sometimes I would tell her, it's going to get ruined. And she would say, no, Mommy, you gave it to me. I'm not taking it off. She closed her eyes for a second, as if she were seeing the scene again, the skinny 12-year-old girl in front of the mirror, holding the little pendant on her chest. But now Carmen pointed to the bag. It's blue. Who did that? Why did they do that? Alex took a deep breath. He also wanted to understand from the first time he saw it, but now he had a clue. He signaled to Herrera, who was at the door, and the captain entered with his hat in his hand. Doña Carmen, Herrera began respectfully, remember that we went to the shed, and there was blue paint everywhere. Yes, I remember, she said with a sad look. I saw the photos. I saw the hearts on the wall. Everything blue. It looked like the work of someone with a screw loose. Herrera, we already have reports of a person, Herrera said. In that area, a man known as Rogelio, nicknamed El Gallo, who is linked to several crimes, threats, assault, robbery, homicides, and illegal detention networks. He measured his words because he didn't want to say captivity of women in front of a mother who almost lost her daughter. That man has a habit of marking his things with blue paint. Tools, chairs, chains, even necklaces. Carmen opened her eyes wide. Are you saying that he painted my daughter's necklace? That's most likely, Herrera replied. You gave it to her as a silver gift, but he saw the bag and painted it blue to say, now it's mine. Carmen was shaking, clutching her shawl with her hands. She swallowed her tears, but couldn't. The tears came out thick. What kind of man, she whispered with pain and anger, what kind of man paints a gift from a mother to her daughter to say that he is in charge? Alex spoke softly but firmly. It wasn't his gift. He pointed to it. This isn't his. It's hers and yours. This was desecrated. He grabbed something clean and put a dirty mark on it. Carmen wiped her face with a mixture of anger and sadness. She wanted to erase the mother, he said. She wanted to erase the bond. That's why he painted it, because every time she saw it, she would remember him, not me. Herrera felt that kind of man does that. He controls even the color. He marks with what he has. And he used blue. Carmen looked at the bag again. The blue heart inside seemed harder, colder. She touched the plastic with her fingertip. That blue isn't hers, she said decisively. It's not my girl's. That blue is his. Alex took a deep breath and leaned forward slightly. Doña Carmen, when I found that necklace on her in the emergency room, I didn't know whose it was. I just saw that someone had painted it blue and that it matched the paint on her hand. I thought, this is a symbol of pain. He paused, but I promised her. He looked at Valeria, who was asleep. I promised her that that heart would become a shield, that it would no longer have the meaning he wanted to give it. Carmen looked at him emotionally. Did you say that to her? Yes, she replied. She didn't hear me consciously, but I said it because I understood that what she had to protect had become a chain, and I couldn't leave it like that. Carmen began to cry again, but now it was different. It wasn't just pain. It was crying because she knew that even though she didn't know her, someone had seen her daughter and noticed the violence hidden in a simple pendant. Thank you, doctor, she said, squeezing his hand. Thank you for seeing that. No one sees it. No one notices the detail. Herrera added more technically, we're going to keep the necklace sealed until the formal procedure is over. It's part of the evidence. Everything that was with her shows that there was control. The paint, the number, the shed, the painted necklace. That helps link the case to his name. Then he looked at Alex with authorization. We'll give it back to her. We won't give it back as he left it, said Alex, almost without thinking. We'll give it back, clean, without his mark. Carmen looked at him quickly. He'll take that blue off. It comes off. It comes off, Alex replied confidently, even though he didn't yet know how to do it. What he put on, we remove. What you gave, that stays. The room fell silent for a moment. Carmen lowered her head and began to talk to Valeria. Even though she was asleep, the heart was yours, my love. I gave it to you. It wasn't him. He just painted over it. But you know, she smiled through her tears. The paint comes off, but the love doesn't. Alex felt a lump in his throat. He thought of his own daughter, of the pink bracelet. He thought of how objects hold people. He thought of the fear of seeing the symbol of his love being used to cause harm. Carmen continued, "When she turned 12, I was afraid she would grow up and move away. I gave her the necklace so she would remember she had a home. And look, she ended up trapped in a place where the man used the same piece to say she no longer had a home." He shook his head. "But God is fair. Yes, God brought the piece back to the right place." Herrera stood up. "You don't know how much this is going to help," he said. "When we show this necklace to other victims who went through the same thing, they will recognize it. He does the same thing with all the blue marks." Carmen looked up, surprised. So my daughter wasn't the only one. Herrera took a deep breath. "No, she wasn't," he replied carefully. "And that's why it matters so much that she survived." Carmen squeezed her daughter's hand with more force. "Then you're going to live for her and for the others." Alex looked at the bag again. That blue heart stored there seemed to be waiting for the moment to return to the right chest, without the weight of the attacker. And he knew deep down that returning it clean would do something very powerful. It wasn't just returning an object, it was returning its history. "Doña Carmen," he said, already standing, "when all this is over, when the police give the go-ahead, I'll be the first to return this to you." He pointed to the bag. "But I'm going to return it, saying the same thing I said to her. This heart is your shield, and it will be yours again without its blue." Carmen smiled wearily but with a sparkle in her eyes. "It will be silver again," she said, "like when I bought it for you." She looked at her daughter and added, almost in a whisper, stroking her hair, "Listen, my dear, what he painted on you is not who you are. What he put on top, we're going to remove. What Mom put there, no one can ever take away." The monitor continued to beep calmly. The number was everywhere in the room, as if it were a person. 421 was on his arm, on the walls of the warehouse, in Alex's eyes, in Herrera's report. It was as if everything pointed to him, and no one had stopped to say, "Well, but why that number?" That night, Carmen was sitting on the couch with her old cell phone in her hand. Her eyes were sunken with exhaustion, but her heart was wide awake. While Valeria slept, connected to the cables, Carmen reviewed the old conversations she had saved, the ones you don't delete because they hurt. Voice messages from her daughter, photos, little notes, some from years ago, some from shortly before the disappearance. Alex entered slowly. "Everything okay here?" he asked. "Yes, son, she's breathing well," Carmen replied, without taking her eyes off her cell phone. I sighed, adjusting my glasses. I found something, put the phone on speaker, and listened to the voice that came out. It was Valeria's, but a Valeria from months ago, the voice of someone crying, trying not to make a sound. "Mom, if something happens to me, don't stop looking for room 21421. He said that if I screamed, he would take me back. Mom, don't leave my photo." The recording stopped. Silence fell heavily. Alex froze. She said the number 421. Carmen was already crying. "I remembered today when you said it was on the arm. I went to look for it because that day she sent me this message and then deleted it. I just saved it because she was crying. I heard a machine in the background, a compressor noise just like the one the captain recorded today." Alex remained silent, but his blood was boiling. He signaled to one of the police officers to call Herrera. Herrera entered quickly with his notebook in his hand. "What happened?" Alex pointed to the cell phone. "Listen." Carmen repeated the audio. The captain closed his eyes for a second. Listening. "Trusser 421. He repeated it. He wasn't making up a number. He was saying where they were keeping her. "He's talking about a machine," added Alex. "Just like the one in the warehouse." Herrera connected the dots right away. "That confirms our map," he said. "That warehouse we found is 421, but if it has internal numbering, then there are 420, 419, 422. He looked at Carmen. "That means it's not an isolated place. It's a network of several warehouses or rooms, all painted, all numbered." He opened his notebook and began to speak more technically. There's an industrial area there with 5 identical structures very close together. We always thought they were subdivisions of workshops. But if there's one arm, 4, with 421, 421 is not a random number. It's a cell number. He looked at Alex. The compressor with blue paint is the same one we found. That connects everything. Carmen squeezed the handkerchief, so she didn't get the number wrong that night. She whispered, "She was trying to tell me. I'm in room 421, and I didn't understand." Her eyes filled with tears. The guilt hit her hard. "Don't say that," Alex said quickly. "You didn't have any way of knowing. No one knew it was a prison. Now we know. Now we can go after them." Herrera nodded. "Early tomorrow I'll cross-reference that with the power records and the warehouse owners. We'll find the others." Then he turned back to the 2 of them in a softer tone. S421 isn't just going to help her. It's going to help others too. Carmen did something she hadn't done since the disappearance. She took a deeper breath. The knot she carried of I didn't do anything. It began to loosen. Her daughter had sent the number. She had saved the audio, and now that number was going to be useful. Night fell completely. The hospital grew quieter. Lucy turned off the overhead light and left only the small lamp on. Alex approached the bed. Valeria was different. Not so much in her body, but in her face. She looked less hard, less tense, as if listening to her mother and having people around had taken some of the weight off her. The weight. He leaned over. Valeria called out very softly. She opened her eyes. Just a glance. Still tired, but conscious. She recognized his face. It was the first thing she saw when she came back from death. "Doctor," she murmured in a raspy voice. "Hey." He smiled a little. "You're safe." She swallowed hard. Her voice barely came out. "Are they going there?" she asked fearfully. "To 421? Alex understood instantly. She knew they were going to go back. She knew they were going to search, and the fear returned to her eyes. Fear of getting stuck, of not being able to speak, of freezing during the testimony or the rescue. "Come on," he said sincerely. "Let's go get them, and we're going to need you." But he moved closer. "You're not alone." She closed her eyes as if she were diving back into the memory. Her fingers began to tremble. Her breathing quickened. "No, I don't know if I can," she whispered. "Sometimes my head just shuts down. I want to speak, but nothing comes out. I'll stay. I'll stay there." Alex gently placed his hand on hers. "Then tell me how I can help you," he said firmly. "Tell me what brings you back." She took a moment, then with great difficulty looked up at him. "Yes, I'll stay." She paused, gasping for air. "If I leave, call me, okay?" That name came out sweetly, little one, from a childhood that was stolen from her. "Okay." "No, Valeria." "Formal?" "No." "Patient?" "No." "Number?" "Okay." That's what her mother called her. That's what her friends called her. That's what she called herself in the old audio recordings. It was the name that brought her back. "Okay, Alex," he repeated to show he understood. She nodded slowly. "When they call me Valeria, I feel clinical. I feel like a warehouse. I feel like a number." Tears fell from her eyes. "But when they call me okay, I see myself with my mom in the kitchen, with my photo. I come back." Alex swallowed his tears. "Deal. If you get stuck, I'll call you, okay?" He smiled slightly and said he would tell her, looking her in the eyes. She closed her eyes again, tired, but now calm, as if she had left an emergency instruction. "If I get lost, call me that." Carmen, who had heard everything, cried softly. "I called her that," she said proudly, "since she was little." "Okay, come eat." "Okay, don't climb up there." She looked at the doctor. "Thank you for calling my daughter by her real name." Alex stayed there a little longer, then left. He closed the door slowly, but his heart was not at rest. Something inside him stung strong, a scene that had been pushing him down for years, that of his own daughter. He left the hospital at night. The sky over Houston was dark with few stars. The wind was cold. He got in the car and drove without turning on the radio. Only the noise of the engine and the echo of Valeria's words. "If I get stuck, call me, okay?" He arrived at the cemetery. The guard knew him. He came from time to time, but almost always quickly, unable to stay long. That night was different. He parked, took a rose from the seat, and walked among the gravestones. The sound of his footsteps on the gravel was louder at that hour. He stopped in front of his daughter's grave, a simple plaque. Sophia Cruz, 2019, just 1 year. A year that carried his mistake, the day he froze during medical care, the day he failed to act, the day his daughter's body left this world while he, the doctor, the professional father, remained paralyzed. He stared at the plaque for a while. The wind blew. He ran his hand over the name. "Hello, my little girl," he murmured. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" His eyes filled with tears. No one was there to see him. Only him, his daughter, and God. That day began with a trembling voice. That day I stood up. I saw you leave, and I stood there. I couldn't. No, my hand froze. I was a doctor, and I didn't save you. He took a deep breath, with wet eyes. Today it almost happened again. I almost cut a living girl. Almost. But this time, I didn't freeze. I heard the sigh, and I screamed. I ran. I called. I went all the way. He laughed at himself, crying. "Today I didn't fail you," he said, looking at the tombstone. "Today I honored you. I didn't let another girl leave without someone calling her name. She almost became a cold body, and I didn't allow it." He bent down, resting his forehead against the cold stone. "That day, I froze. Today," he said firmly, "today stayed. Today acted. Today called her, just like her mother. Just like I called you, Sophie." More tears. "Forgive me, daughter," he asked. "I'm going to keep going. I'm going to take care of her. I'm going to take care of others. I'm not going to let fear rule anymore." The wind blew again. He stayed there for a while in silence. It's not that the guilt was gone. Guilt doesn't go away easily, but something closed, as if the circle that began the day she lost Sophia had found a way out, the day she saved Valeria. She got up, dried her face, took a deep breath. "Good night, Sophie," she said before leaving. "Daddy's going to work. There are other girls trapped in 421, and now I won't stop." And so it was. While the police cross-referenced warehouse data with internal numbering and automotive paint, while Carmen held the cell phone with the audio of his daughter, while Valeria slept with the blue shawl over her chest. A doctor alone in a cemetery made peace with his past and decided that the next time someone was between life and death, he would not freeze. The day dawned gray in Houston. The hospital was still asleep, but in the reserved room on the ground floor, the atmosphere was tense. A landline phone sat on the table, cables connected to a small recorder. Herrera stood, his police vest open, his hands crossed behind his back. Alex leaned against the wall, watching silently. Carmen sat in front of the phone, holding a crumpled piece of paper with a handwritten number on it. "Is this it?" Herrera asked, looking at her. Carmen nodded. The number belonged to a man named Rogelio, the man they called El Gallo. He spoke in a firm voice, although his hands trembled at times. He would call at first, asking for money, saying he knew about my daughter. I recorded everything and took it to the police, but nothing ever happened. Herrera approached her and placed a headset on her. "Doña Carmen, you are going to dial and let it ring. If he answers, say only what I tell you, and when I give you the signal, hang up. We need to confirm if he is still using that line, and if the place is still active." Carmen took a deep breath and said, Yes, it's him. "Then we'll know where he is," replied Herrera. "But you can't get carried away. He's going to try to play Alex moved closer. If he says her name, remember, it's to help others, not for him." Carmen clutched the paper, looked at the phone, and made the sign of the cross. "May God be with me." Herrera nodded. "You can dial." The next few seconds felt like an eternity. The sound of the numbers being dialed, the tone on speakerphone, each beep echoing in the room. 1, 2, 3, 5 calls. No one answered. Herrera signaled to hang up. Carmen was about to do so when a click came from the line. "Hello?" said a hoarse, drawling male voice. Carmen froze, her hand suspended in the air. Herrera signaled her to continue. "Who's speaking?" asked the man. Carmen hesitated, and her voice came out weak but clear. "I'm Carmen Santos. I'm looking for Valeria." Silence. The background noise began to stand out, a repetitive metallic humming like the sound of a paint compressor. Herrera looked at one of the agents and gave a signal. The policeman began to record the man's voice. Valeria returned coldly. Carmen stifled a cry. Yes, her. The man let out a low whistle. I thought she wasn't breathing anymore, but look at that. Herrera signaled to stay calm. Alex clenched his fists from the corner. Where is she? Carmen asked, trying to sound firm. I want to see her. The man laughed again, mockingly. Later, sir. Her place is already taken. The words fell like a stone on her chest. Taken? What do you mean? Why? She asked, her voice breaking. The noise of the compressor rose, drowning out his voice a little. Don't worry. That's already been taken care of. Herrera raised his finger. Bingo, and pointed to an open map on the table where the industrial areas with paint shops were marked. The background noise was from the same type of machine used in old warehouses. Where is she? Carmen asked, now louder, her emotions rising. Tell me where. But the man began to laugh, a laugh that froze the air. You never learn. Each one has its number, and mine is blue. He hung up. The silence in the room was brutal. Only the sound of the recording continued to play, repeating the hum of the compressor. Herrera took a deep breath and slammed his fist on the table, not out of anger, but out of certainty. It's him, he said, the same voice of the old audios, same pattern, same code, and the noise. She looked at the sound technician. Confirm what we thought. Compressor active. Then Alex asked tensely, does the place still exist? It exists, Herrera replied, but it's not the same warehouse. The echo of the sound is different. This one is bigger, and there's more than one compressor running. Carmen was in shock, still holding the receiver in her hand as if the call hadn't ended, her eyes filled with tears, her breathing ragged. Alex approached slowly and crouched down beside her. He doesn't know that she survived, Doña Carmen. That's good. He thinks she's still just a number. Carmen looked at him with a mixture of anger and pain. No one is going to call my daughter a number ever again. Herrera approached, took the phone from the table, and turned off the recording system. You did what you had to do. Now leave it to us. She felt it, but the tears began to fall, falling. I heard the sound, Captain. That noise was the same as the one in the warehouse. Exactly the same sound she must have heard for months. We're going to use that, said Herrera. The background noise can be triangulated with the recordings from the sound expert. We can determine the distance and the type of structure. Alex stood up, staring at the recorder. The compressor is the thread that connects everything. He marks, he paints, he erases people. But today, it gave away where Carmen is. She wiped her tears with her shawl. So that noise that always meant fear for her will now help us find him. Yes, Herrera replied. And when we find him, he'll hear that sound for another reason. The recorder was still running, emitting a metallic hum. Herrera ordered it to be paused. The three of them fell silent, each with their own feelings. Carmen with a broken heart, Alex with contained rage, Herrera with a soldier's focus. On the corner of the table, the map was open, covered with blue marks. Herrera took a red pen and drew a circle around the area. One type of feeling, Carmen with a broken heart, Alex with contained rage, Herrera with a soldier's focus. In the corner of the table, the map covered in blue marks was open. Herrera took a red pen and circled a remote area near the road. Here, he said, the only active point with a line and compressor in this radius. Large warehouse with no employee records, irregular lighting, the same type of paint we found. Carmen looked at her hands, clutching the shawl on her lap. Is that where it is? She asked in a low voice. Herrera replied quietly, That's where it is. Alex looked at her and put his hand on her shoulder. You gave us the key, Doña Carmen. She shook her head, still in shock. I just called, and he answered. Herrera finished and gave himself up. Carmen closed her eyes and began to cry, but this time the tears came with relief. Finally, she whispered. Finally, God heard me. Herrera turned off the lights in the living room. Now it's our turn to listen to the sound he let escape. He looked at them both seriously. Tomorrow before sunrise, we're going to go to the compressor. He forgot to silence. Carmen remained seated, her face wet, her heart beating fast. Alex stood beside her, looking at her, and felt for the first time in a long time that fear could be turned into strength. On the table, the tape recorder still glowed with a flashing red light. It was still dark when the patrol cars left the courtyard. The engine was running quietly, the lights were off, and the men communicated only with gestures. Herrera was in the front with a vest, earphones in his ears and a firm hand on the steering wheel. Alex was beside him, not as the doctor on call, but as someone who needed to see the end of what began on the coroner's table. He said almost nothing on the way, listening through his earphones to the same sound as the recording. The compressor, that was what was going to guide them all. "Listen," said Herrera, showing the cell phone connected to the system. Same rhythm, same echo. That's where they arrived at the northern industrial zone. As the sky began to lighten that grayish blue of before dawn, the air smelled of iron, oil, and paint. The main warehouse had its gate ajar, just like the first one, but this one was bigger, with 2 sides and a back with an exit to a vacant lot. Herrera raised his hand, and the men moved quickly and silently. Unit 1, left flank. Unit 2, close in on the side. 3 and 4, with me to the main entrance. He looked at Alex. "Stay back. Don't stray. If there's a victim, I'll pull you out." Alex nodded. "Ready?" Herrera asked over the radio. "Ready?" Then the first police officer kicked the gate. The crash echoed through the warehouse, and the noise of the compressor could be heard even louder from inside, mixed with the heavy smell of automotive paint. They entered shouting, "Police! Hands up! Don't move!" Inside, the scene was almost a carbon copy of the other place, but worse. In the middle of the warehouse were 2 chairs with thick wheels and blue tape binding the arms. In one was a very thin woman with short hair, her eyes wide open, already with tape over her mouth. In the other was a younger woman with a torn blouse and marked wrists. Both looked at the police officers, and the relief was so great that it seemed like pain. "Help me," the one with short hair tried to speak, but the tape choked her. Next to her, on a metal table, was a clear plastic box full of necklaces, all with the same heart pendant, all painted blue. There were at least 12, some with names crossed out, others with nothing. Living proof that this was not an isolated case. It was methodical photography. "Everything!" Herrera shouted before touching anything. The forensic expert entered at that moment with his camera, taking a series of photos. Chairs, tape, the victim's hands, the box of necklaces, the compressor, paint cans, the number 421 written again on the back wall, and this time, also 422 and 423 scratched next to it. Organization, routine, people who did this more than once. A man from the warehouse tried to run out the side door, but the cops knocked him down. But what really mattered was that Rogelio, the rooster, wasn't there in front. Herrera looked around quickly. "Where is he?" One of the police officers shouted from behind. "Captain, back door!" Herrera ran. Alex followed him to the back of the warehouse. There was a smaller door already open with fresh footprints in the dust outside. Only the wire fence, and beyond that, the vacant lot. In the distance, they saw a thin man with a cap running and jumping over the fence, disappearing through an opening in the wall. Rogelio, the tall policeman, shouted, and Herrera fired 2 shots into the air, but the cock had already escaped through a passageway that only someone familiar with the place would know how to use. "Damn," Herrera muttered through clenched teeth. "We'll find him later," said Alex, panting. "But today, we got them alive." They went back inside. The first woman was already crying. One of the police officers cut the tape with round-tipped scissors, very slowly, so as not to hurt her. She began to move her arms, trying to free herself. Calm down, said one of them. "You're safe now." The other, the younger one, was shaking so much that the chair almost moved. Alex approached with open palms. Hello, I'm a doctor. Everything is fine. Yes, we're going to get you out of here." "He'll be back," she stammered in Spanish. "Quickly. He always comes back." "Not today," Alex replied firmly. "Today, we got here first." He signaled to Lucy, who was coming in the medical support unit. She brought the first aid kit and 2 thermal blankets. "I need both your arms before I cut," Lucy said, "to take photos." because even in the midst of panic, there was protocol. Everything that was there was going to be used against him later. Nothing could be touched or disturbed. The expert took a photo of each wrist with marks from tape, a photo of the mouth with adhesive marks, a photo of the tied legs, a photo of the wheelchairs exactly as Alex had imagined when he saw the paint marks in the first warehouse, a photo of the box of necklaces, a photo of the wall with the numbers, a photo of the machine turned on. Then they began to release them. The woman with short hair hugged the first police officer she reached, crying loudly and out of rhythm. I thought that since she was no longer saying without finishing, "It's over, it's over," she repeated. Alex covered her shoulders with the blanket. "Breathe with me, like this," he said, and made the gesture inhaling and exhaling slowly. The second young woman looked at the floor. Her face was stained with blue paint on the sides, as if they had put the necklace there when she saw the box of necklaces being photographed. She panicked. "No, no, no, no." She shook her head. "Don't put that on me again." Lucy crouched down to her level. "No one is going to put anything on you, my girl. No one," she said seriously. "This is now police property." At that moment, Herrera ordered the entire box to be bagged. "This whole box is going to the lab, double seal, case code 4221, he said, "and make a note of blue heart necklaces, identical pattern to the victim's, Valeria." Alex made sure he heard that. "Hers is still cataloged there at the hospital," he said. "Same model. He made them all the same, because that's going to bring him down," Herrera replied. "Same clue, same pattern, same place. You can't say it was an accident." Another police officer appeared carrying a bag of tools with blue tape rolled up inside. Blue tape, stamps, markers, a rusty gun. "Everything in the bag and with a photo," Herrera repeated. "Nothing leaves without a photo." The atmosphere, which had previously been one of terror, now seemed organized. Every object had a number. Every chair had a label. Every victim had a name written down. They were no longer women trapped in a warehouse. They were people with reports, with expert opinions, with evidence. Alex helped put the women in the ambulance. The first one, still crying, grabbed his wrist. "It was her, right?" she asked agitatedly. "The girl who escaped. The one who was dead and wasn't?" Alex understood instantly that they were talking about Valeria. The news had already spread among those who were trapped. "It was her," she said with shining eyes. "She survived." The woman closed her eyes tightly, as if in gratitude. "Then it was worth it," he murmured, almost crying right there. Outside, Herrera was talking on the radio. "The main suspect escaped through the east side. We had information about his exit, but he knows the terrain. Send a search team and alert the highways. Here inside, the scene is preserved. We have 2 living victims and containment materials." He looked at the expert. "A box with several blue necklaces received," replied the central office. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, the expert photographed the wall with the numbers. Room and bathroom, 1422423, some crossed out, others. Written over and on the floor, the remains of another torn photo, like the one Carmen had, like the one they found in the first warehouse. "Same pattern, Captain," the expert called. "This confirms, series, it's not an improvised captivity. It's a system." "I know," Herrera replied. "And now we have proof at the end of the operation, the evidence bags were lined up. 01 box with blue necklaces, sealed. 02 blue adhesive tape used on the chairs. 03 photos of the victims tied up. 04 tools with blue paint. 05 photo of the wall with internal numbering. 06 paint sample from the compressor. 07 chair cover with nail mark. All with time, signature, seal number, impeccable chain of custody. Nothing was going to disappear along the way. Nothing would be lost in the system. When the case reached the judge, everything would be there. The shape, the color, the pattern, and above all, the fact that Valeria's necklace, which was still stored at the hospital, was one of many, all made by the same man. Alex looked at the bags being sealed with the sharp sound of the seal. "Hers stays as it is," he said. "Until we can return it properly, it stays," confirmed Herrera. "Your patience is key. It's what shows that she left here almost dead. The ambulances left with the two women, the sirens low, without fanfare, because they had already suffered enough. Alex went in the first one, holding the hand of the woman with short hair. She was trembling. "Are you going to the same hospital as the other one?" "Yes," he said. "There are good people there. People who sing, people who make shawls." She smiled a little tiredly. "I want to see the one who escaped," she said in an almost extinguished. "You're going to see her," he replied. "You're both going to see her, and you're going to know that you weren't just a number. You were women, and now there's proof of that in the warehouse." Only the agents remained, and the compressor was turned off. Without the noise, the place seemed colder, sadder, but at the same time, empty of evil, as if the pain had left in the form of people. And so it was, on a cold morning with gray light and the smell of paint, that the police showed that that blue that had trapped them would now serve to convict them, and the necklace that had almost killed a woman remained catalogued, intact, waiting only for the right day to return to the right chest, clean, without the color of the aggressor, with its meaning restored. Dawn fell heavily on Houston. The hospital was almost silent. Only the distant sound of the nurse's footsteps and the slight hum of the machines could be heard. The clock read 3:12 when the monitor next to Valeria's bed began to flash faster. Lucy, who was on duty, glanced sideways and frowned. "Aye," said the doctor in a low voice. "Her tracing looks strange." Alex, who was reviewing some studies on a table, looked at the screen. The sound that had been stable before, that calm beep-beep, began to drag on, a longer, higher-pitched sound. "Pressure dropping," he said as he walked toward the bed. "Increase the oxygen to 100%. Lucy ran. Valeria began to convulse, her body rigid, her eyes open but lost, seeing no one. It was as if she had returned to some place inside her own head, a dark, enclosed place where only fear existed. "Okay," said Alex, trying to reach her. "Look at me, okay? Look at me." But she couldn't hear. Air entered her mouth and came out in short sighs. The monitor beeped again, now with a long, continuous tone. Lucy, desperately. "It's jamming, doctor." Alex took her hand. "Breathe with me, okay?" He tried again, looking into her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes. There's no one else here." "It's me, it's Alex." But Valeria's eyes were moving quickly, as if they were seeing another world. She murmured something, almost without a voice. "No, don't take me. Don't take me with him." The sound of that phrase pierced Alex like a knife. He knew she wasn't talking to him. She was talking to her memory. The monitor began to beep louder. The line was almost straight. Lucy pressed the buttons. "Saturation 30. Doctor, she's going into cardiac arrest." Alex rested his forehead on hers. It was the only gesture he could make. He lowered his voice to almost a whisper and said, "Okay, look at me. Look at me. Please. It's me. You're here with me. Okay, come back." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and remembered what she had asked him days before. "If I go, call me. Okay." Then he repeated it more firmly, his voice breaking. "Okay. Listen. Okay. It's me. Okay. Don't go. Okay. Okay." His voice trembled, but it sounded confident. It was warm, and it was as if the sound of that word crossed the space between them. Valeria moved. A minimal reaction, a slight tremor on her lips. At that moment, the door opened. Carmen rushed in, her face pale, her blue shawl falling from her shoulders. "My God!" she cried. "What's going on?" Lucy tried to stop her. "She's in crisis, Doña Carmen, please." But Carmen didn't wait. She went straight to the bed and took her daughter's face in both hands, as she used to do when she was a child. "My life," she said in a trembling voice. "It's me, Mom. Listen to my voice." Alex took a step back, leaving space. Then Carmen began to sing softly, trembling, but she sang, "Go to sleep, my life, go to sleep, because outside the moon will take care of you." The same song, the same one that she used to sing to Valeria as a child, the same one she sang when she saw her again, the same one that fear tried to erase. The sound filled the room, and in the midst of that soft singing, the monitor, which had almost turned off, beeped louder, then again and again. Alex looked at the screen. The trembling line began to return. "She's coming back. whispered Lucy, her eyes filled with tears. "She's coming back." Carmen didn't stop singing. She was crying, but she kept her voice breaking at times. But she didn't stop. Alex approached again, touched the mother's shoulder, and spoke softly. "Keep going, ma'am. She can hear you." Carmen nodded and sang louder through her tears. "Go to sleep, my love. Go to sleep now." Valeria's lips moved very slowly, as if trying to follow the melody. Her chest rose and fell at a more even rhythm, her previously labored breathing now flowing freely. The sound of the monitor stabilized. The line that had been almost straight was now a living drawing. Beep, beep, beep. Lucy covered her mouth with her hand, crying silently. Alex closed his eyes, rested his forehead on Valeria's again, and repeated in an emotional whisper, "Okay, look at me. Okay, you're here with me." She opened her eyes slowly, her pupils moving, trying to focus, and when she finally recognized his face and that of her mother singing, tears slid down the corners of her eyes. "Mom," she whispered. "Mom!" Carmen cried loudly, laughing and sobbing at the same time. "I'm here, my love. I'm here." Alex smiled with moist eyes. "Welcome back." "Okay." Valeria took a deep breath and closed her eyes again, but now in peace. The monitor remained steady, marking the same rhythm as the song that was still playing. Carmen stood there, stroking her daughter's hair, her daughter. Her voice lowered until it became almost a prayer. "You will never leave me again, my love. Never again." Lucy turned off the alarm and wiped her tears with the back of her hand. Alex looked at the mother and daughter and felt something inside him dissolve. It was as if that moment had cleansed the fear that still remained in him, in them, in the air. The room fell silent, but alive with the sound of heartbeats filling the space as if it were a new song, the simplest and most beautiful of all. Beep, 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 and that was how it was. With a word and a song, the voice that brought back the one whom fear wanted to take away, the voice that transformed trauma into life, the voice that for a second made time stand still, just to remember that when love calls, the heart obeys. The room was too bright for such a dark matter. A simple table, a tape recorder turned on, a flag next to it, a computer with the screen open on the police system on the other side. Two agents, one writing, the other just listening. Herrera stood with his arms crossed, without his heavy uniform, so as not to scare anyone who entered that room. She was a survivor, not a criminal. Valeria was brought in a wheelchair. She could already take a few steps, but so as not to tire her too much, they brought her in like that, with Doña Pilar's blue shawl over her shoulders, her hair pulled back a different style, away from that old bracelet. Her eyes still showed fear, but they also had a new sparkle, the sparkle of someone who knows they now have people by their side. Carmen came in, holding her daughter's hand tightly. On the other side was Lucy, and behind the door, without fully entering, was Alex. He didn't have to be there as a doctor, but he was there as someone who doesn't abandon a story that almost ended in an autopsy. "Mrs. Valeria," the officer began carefully, "this is the official testimony. You can stop whenever you want. You can ask for water. You can breathe. Nothing here is against you. Okay?" Valeria nodded, her hands shaking a little. She looked at her mother. "I'm here, daughter," said Carmen, squeezing her hand tighter. "Say what you need to say. What you can't say, we'll cry about together, but don't keep it inside anymore." Lucy leaned in and said, "Remember what we said. If you get stuck, look at me. If you go too far, we'll bring you back." Val. She took a deep breath. Her face hardened a little, not with anger, but with courage. The courage needed by someone who had been humiliated to tell what she had experienced. She took another breath and began. "My name is..." Her voice was thin, almost like a child's. "My name is Valeria Santos." Carmen bit her lip to keep from crying. "They took me," Valeria continued, looking down. "A man told me it would be quick, that he was just going to drop off some things. I trusted him." She paused, but that wasn't it. The agent typed slowly, without rushing. Herrera just watched. "Can you tell us the name of that man?" he asked calmly. A heavy silence fell. Valeria lowered her face, her fingers clutching the fabric of her shawl. She had already told them about the chains. She had already told them about the number. She had already told them about the ink. But this was different. This was for the record. The tape recorder was going to save it. And when it records, it's as if everyone is listening. "If you want, I can say it for you," said Herrera, trying to ease the tension. "We already have it." "No," she interrupted softly. "I want to say it." Lucy squeezed her shoulder. Alex took a step forward. Carmen was already crying. Valeria put her hand on her chest to catch her breath. She remembered the song about the valley, Alex's face telling her that she wasn't a number, and then she spoke very softly, almost just moving her lips. "Rogelio." "No, heard," said the agent kindly. She looked up, and at that moment, as if gathering all her strength, she said it again, now clearly, firmly, loudly, without touching on the shame. "Rogelio. Rogelio Martinez, they call him." El Gallo swallowed hard. He was silent. Alex closed his eyes. Herrera took a deep breath, as if receiving the missing piece. Carmen let out the tears she had been holding back, but Valeria wasn't finished. She looked at the recorder as if she were looking directly at the man who had locked her in 421, and said, "And listen to me carefully. The shame is not mine. The shame is his." She said it looking straight ahead, not at the floor, not at her hand, as if she were returning the trash to its owner. The other women, the two who had been rescued from the last shed, were outside when they heard the phrase. One of them came in without asking permission and grabbed Valeria's hand. Out her hand to Valeria. "You're right," she said, crying. "The shame is his." The other one came in too. The three of them stood holding hands, forming a line of pain and dignity. The agent looked at Herrera. That was too powerful to cut short. "Record it," Herrera said, word for word, and they recorded it. After that, everything went quickly, with Valeria's testimony, the photos, the expert reports, the audio, the box of necklaces, and the bruises on all of them. The police got what they needed. The following week, they carried out a larger operation, closing the other entrances to the road and catching El Gallo. Not in the shed. He was trying to leave the city, but it was too late. His name was already on paper, his voice was already recorded, and above all, a woman he thought would die without speaking spoke when Herrera broke the news at the hospital. Carmen hugged him, as she hugs a family member. "They caught him, ma'am," said the captain with a tired smile. With the audio recordings and the testimonies, the judge didn't let him go. "He'll answer for everything." Carmen closed her eyes. Thank you," she repeated. "For me and for them." Valeria listened from her bed and cried, not out of pain, but out of justice, out of knowing it wasn't in vain, out of knowing she survived, and that changed something. And then came the second part of the reward, the one that isn't prison, the one that doesn't appears in the news. Lucy used her cell phone to create a group with a simple name, no embellishments, no flower photo. She wrote, "Room 421 Women Who Return," and began to add Valeria, the two rescued from the second warehouse, two others who were located by the NGO when they heard about the capture, and even Doña Carmen to the group. Lucy's first message was, 421 is no longer Zelda. Now it is room of return, room of healing. If you freeze up, let us know if you have nightmares. Write if you remember a smell or a color. Say it here. No one is ashamed. The messages started to arrive. Thank you for not forgetting me today. I woke up smelling ink, but I'm better. Can someone call me? I'm scared. And there was always someone who responded. Sometimes it was Lucy. Sometimes it was Carmen. Sometimes it was Valeria herself, still with a weak voice, but already comforting. Another I was scared too, but it's over now. Call. Love is enough. That helps. Alex read the group from afar, excited. He didn't join. He said that was their space, but he watched. And when he saw that the number that had once signified pain was now the name of a community, his heart opened. That same week he went to the hospital administration. "I want to request a change," he said. "A change to where, Dr. Alex?" the director asked, surprised. "You just took over autopsies." He took a deep breath. "I chose autopsies because I thought that way I wouldn't fail again," confessed. "A dead body doesn't claim a dead body. It doesn't look at you. But now I don't want cold bodies anymore." I want warm life. I want to be at the emergency room door. I want to be the first to say he's alive, not the last to say it's over. The director looked at him intently. Are you sure? It's much heavier, faster, riskier. Alex smiled a little more. Less chance of freezing. They accepted his change, and that's how, in the same hospital where a woman was almost autopsied alive, a doctor started over, and where a number painted by a criminal meant imprisonment, a group of women was born who began sending each other goodnight audio messages, who began calling each other by their real names, who began saying it wasn't our fault. Valeria, now stronger, recorded an audio message for the group. Today, I testified. I said his name. I didn't die. I didn't fall apart. I thought I was going to break, but I didn't. Because you were there. Because my mom was there. Because Dr. Alex was at the door. Because I know the shame is his, not mine. 421 is now ours. Carmen heard it, cried, and replied, 421 is now Victoria's Day. And from his corner, watching all this happen, Alex thought of his daughter, thought of the steel table, thought of the early morning that changed everything, and understood that sometimes the greatest autopsy we perform is not on someone else's body, but on our own guilt. Now, with the rooster imprisoned and the women accompanied, that chapter could be closed, but without forgetting, because it was precisely by remembering and talking that they won the hospital corridor. It felt different that day. The lights were softer, the air less heavy. It still smelled like medicine, but there was something new, a feeling of starting over. Alex walked slowly with a small velvet box in his hands. Inside was the necklace, the same heart that one day they found dirty, painted, heavy. Now it was clean, shiny again, like silver. The authorization took a while to arrive, but finally the police released it. It was closed evidence, case closed, and now he could return it. Lucy was waiting for him at the door of the room. She had been awake for a while, she said, smiling, and asked to get ready. She said that today was an important day. Alex took a deep breath, nodded, and went in. Valeria was sitting on the bed with the blue shawl on her shoulders, her hair loose and her gaze calm. She had a drawing on her lap, the paint still wet. Carmen, next to her, was arranging some flowers in a glass of water. When she saw Alex, she smiled that small, shy, but complete smile. "But doctor," she said in a soft voice, "it's clean now." Alex also smiled, without saying anything yet. He walked towards her and slowly opened the little box. Inside, the silver heart sparkled in the sunlight coming through the window, with no trace of blue, no marks, only shine. Carmen put her hand to her mouth. Lucy was moved at the door. Valeria looked at the necklace for several seconds in silence, and then began to cry, a different kind of cry. Without despair, it was relief. I tried to speak, but my voice broke. I thought I would never want to see this again. She took a deep breath, but now it feels different. Alex knelt by the bed, still holding the box in his hands. "It's the same one," he said in a low voice. "We just took away what wasn't yours." She looked up with tears falling. "When I saw it for the first time," she said, "I thought it was my prison." Hoizon touched the necklace with her fingers. "I feel like it's my shield." Alex smiled, moved. "It's what I promised you, remember?" She nodded. "I remember. You said it would become a shield." He took the necklace out of the box and carefully placed it around her neck. The cold metal touched her warm skin. The pendant hung right in the center of her chest, as if it had finally come home. Carmen couldn't hold back her tears. "That necklace was born with me, and with her," she said, "and now it's back where it belongs." Lucy leaned against the wall and discreetly wiped her face. Valeria looked at everyone with a sparkle in her eyes that no one had seen before. Then she took the drawing from her lap and gave it to Alex. "I made it for you." He took it carefully and opened it. It was a simple drawing with marker strokes in the center, several people holding hands. Him, Lucy, Carmen, the other women, and her in the middle. Above it was a heart, but it was no longer blue. It had yellow rays coming out in all directions, like a sun. Alex ran his finger slowly over the paper, as if afraid of breaking it. "You turned the blue into a sun," he said, surprised. "Why?" She smiled because his was cold, mine is warm, and she pointed to the back of the paper. Alex turned the drawing over. In firm handwriting it said, 421 days to live again. Thank you for saying my name. He read it aloud with difficulty, his voice trembling. 421 days to live again, he repeated, looking at her. Okay, she nodded. It was 421 days from the day he locked me up to the day you found me. I counted them. She smiled calmly. But now is day one. Alex closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, tears were already falling. He squeezed her hand tightly. Yes, he said in a low voice, trying not to cry. Today is day one. Carmen brought her face close to her daughter's, kissed her on the forehead, and whispered, Day one, my life, day one. Lucy took a step forward and took Valeria's other hand. Day one for all of us. The sun was shining through the window and hit the necklace, making the heart shine. The light reflected off the wall and formed a small golden reflection that seemed to move with the sound of the wind. Alex stared at it for a moment. He remembered the first night, the cold darkness, the scalpel that didn't cut, the impossible sigh. And now, there in front of that woman, alive with the same heart that had once been a sign of pain, he understood what it all meant. I've seen a lot of death, okay, he said, moved, but today I'm seeing life. She squeezed his hand because someone listened when no one else did. He smiled and said, Because you wanted to come back. The room fell silent. Only the soft wind could be heard at the window. The sun spread further, covering everyone's faces. Carmen looked at her daughter, then at Alex and said softly, God painted the blue again, but this time, as it should be. Alex didn't answer. He just nodded with his eyes filled with tears. He looked at Valeria one last time and said almost in a whisper, as if talking to himself, Today is day one. And it was. Day one of breathing freely. Day one without fear. Day one of a heart returned clean, ready to beat at its own rhythm. Day one of a new beginning, not of forgetting, but of healing. The necklace moved on his chest, shining like a small sun, and everyone there understood that after so much pain, yes, there was a way to be born again, with the same scars but with a name that no one else could erase.